Dance of Death is Iron Maiden's 13th album, and is an album that's quite similar to Brave New World in a lot of ways, but in also a lot of ways is quite different. Now, after Brave New World, the band was completely back in mainstream popularity, and a lot of people were looking forward to this release. You know, there was a lot of press, and it was quite a big album for Iron Maiden, and a lot of fans were waiting for a long time for this album, because 3 years at this point is still a relatively long time to wait for an Iron Maiden album. But this album stylistically is a lot more epic than Brave New World. It's a lot more storytelling, and the guitars just sound even bigger and even more lush, which I really like. I really appreciate and really like the guitar sound. The bass is not quite as present. I can't hear it quite as much, and I think this is because Steve Harris is not riding around gallops as much. He's trying some different bass lines, and it works, but the bass suffers a little bit. It's not quite as prominent, and the drums are still pretty good. They're all right. You know, Nico's still playing okay. He's not getting that old yet. Bruce Dickinson. This is the first album that I think Bruce Dickinson's voice, you can tell that he's really getting old at this point. There are some times where he struggles to hit some high notes, but in general, Bruce Dickinson is still Bruce Dickinson and is still an amazing vocalist. So yeah, I have no problem with the vocals in particular. Now, the production was done by Kevin Shirley, and overall, it's really good production, pretty similar to Brave New World, but even more epic. Really great guitar sound, as I've already said. The artwork, pure garbage. Moving on. And yeah, the main problem why this album is generally considered a little bit weaker for Iron Maiden's 21st century albums is I just think that it's not as solid. You know, Brave New World is a really tight album, has some really tight writing, but this album suffers from some writing on some songs that's just not very memorable and not really that special. However, Iron Maiden still manages to have quite a bit of variation in their music in terms of tempo and a lot of different dynamics, and using a lot of different kind of drum fills, different guitar lines, you know, things that still keep it interesting, you know, not just writing the same thing over and over again. However, the writing does start to suffer a little bit, and you can tell that some tracks are clearly just fillers. The chorus retardation on this album takes a little step back, which I like. A lot of the songs are under the 6-minute mark, which I really like. There's really only a couple tracks where I think the chorus retardation is too excessive. But yeah, a lot of tracks are just kind of short and sweet, and I really like that, even though there are a lot of big, epic tracks. So anyway, let's just move on to the track list. Now, the first song is Wildest Dreams, and this was, I believe, the first single, along with Rainmaker, and it's one of two sort of really short, straight to the point kind of songs. But I really don't like this song that much. I think it's kind of a weak opener. Just a little bit of a weak chorus, and it's not really anything that special, so not a great start for the album. And the next track is Rainmaker, which is a lot better. I really actually quite like this track. It has a great opening riff, and then has a really good guitar solo, and most of all, it's just a really good, short, catchy track. I think this would have been a better opener, to be honest. But yeah, good track. And we move on to No More Lies, and No More Lies is an excellent song. I consider it the epic of the album, even though it's not the longest song. I consider it the epic because it's the only song that Steve Harris wrote purely by himself. All the other songs were co-wrote by different members of the band. And this track is just absolutely amazing. You have sort of intro that's sort of reminiscent of The Klansman. Just really beautiful guitar lines, really beautiful riffs, and just really soft, and when it gets really, really fast, and you got the guitar solos, it's just amazing. But the best part is when it goes from that really slow, and then you just got Nico just pounding away at the drums, and then Bruce just completely singing way faster, higher, and stronger. It's just amazing. So yeah, No More Lies, probably my favorite track on the album, and just love the way it builds and builds. It does feel like an extremely epic track. And then we move on to Montsegur. I believe I pronounced that correctly, or I don't know. And this is quite a notable track because it's extremely thrashy. And what I mean by this is the guitars sound much heavier and less melodic than Iron Maiden's used to doing. You know, very thrashy kind of a sounding of a song, but it's a little bit of a weak chorus. But just listen to that intro. That intro is like, unless you're showing it to somebody that really knows Iron Maiden, I don't think anyone would be able to guess that intro was done by Iron Maiden, because it really sounds extremely heavy. But anyway, moving on to Dance of Death, title track. Now, this is the longest song on the album, and it's actually a really good song. It's really kind of telling a story. You know, a lot of good lyrics in here that I really like, and has a great guitar line and some great solos, and it really sounds really epic, using a lot of different guitars, just the 3 guitars working together to create just this beautiful overall guitar sound. But one thing to note is that there is a couple times in the song where Bruce struggles to hit some of the really high notes, and that's understandable. Obviously, he's starting to age at this point. But yeah, that doesn't really hurt the overall song. I really like this song, one of the better ones on this album. And then we move on to New Frontier, and this song is... And then we move on to Gates of Tommorow, and this is just a bit of a weak track. It's just a filler. No, not really that special, and just kind of has a bit of a weak chorus, not really that memorable. And then we move on to New Frontier, which is kind of the same story, to be honest. A bit fillerish, kind of a weak chorus, and doesn't really have anything special, and it's just kind of getting a little bit stale, you know. This is kind of when you feel like the writing's starting to not be as good as it was previously on, say, Brave New World, which was always coming at you with either really catchy music or really interesting music that captures your attention. But these 2 tracks can just be a little bit boring. But then we move on to Paschendale, which changes everything completely. Now, this is probably one of the most epic tracks on this entire album, and it starts out with that really unique sounding guitar intro, which is just so amazing. I really love that. And you got Bruce's really soft vocals, and just building up to just this great sort of explosion of energy when they go into the chorus that just sounds so great. Now, after the intro, it just gets really fast. Really good lyrics. The lyrics are obviously about Paschendale, the battle in World War I. And yeah, just great song. I really love this song. You know, everyone's performing great. It's just a great vocal performance, you know. And this is just one of the most memorable tracks off this album. Really epic, really kind of storytelling. And yeah, I just absolutely love this song. Probably the most epic song on this album. And then we move on to Face in the Sand. Now, this has a pretty good intro, but it's kind of a bit boring, to be honest, and kind of suffers from a bit of a weak chorus. A little bit repetitive, though it's not too bad, but yeah, it's just a little bit of a filler. And then we move on to Age of Innocence, and Age of Innocence is not really that interesting of a song. Has a good guitar line in there and some other good elements, but it's just nothing that particularly special. It has a pretty catchy chorus, actually, but kind of feels a bit like a filler. And we move on to Journeyman, and Journeyman is a great track. I really like this track. Obviously, one of the most notable things is the acoustics thing, which I think really adds to the music. Iron Maiden doesn't do acoustic very much, but when they do, it sounds pretty good, I think. And it's a little bit repetitive. It's one of the longer tracks, but it is quite a beautiful song, and I do quite like it. And it's I appreciate Iron Maiden, you know, doing something different, and it's quite a unique way to end the album. So in conclusion, Dance of Death is definitely a very mixed bag. Some absolutely amazing tracks like Paschendale and No More Lies. But you do see the writing kind of suffering a little bit off Brave New World, which just feels really tight. This album feels like they could have worked on it a bit longer and could have maybe cut out a couple of the fillers and maybe wrote some new material, or just, I don't know, done something to make it feel more tight, more like a solid, more presentable unit. However, this still shows off Iron Maiden is able to do different things and show some great variation, but it can sometimes feel like it's lacking inspiration. It doesn't feel that inspired at times. But despite that, it still is a pretty good album, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. later.